Hi, I'm Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative OBGYN. Everyone is talking about GLP-1 agonists and similars. So we're talking about the new weight loss drugs that are so overwhelmingly being utilized. So I'm saying there is a certain population where their use is appropriate, but they are being far overused, and we really don't have data at the doses, particularly that they're being used at in terms of the recommended doses for weight loss, which are many times higher than what was being utilized for quite some time as a diabetic pharmaceutical. And we don't have long-term data. So here's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how you can utilize various supplements to aid in your weight loss journey. Now, there is no miracle nutritional supplement out there that's going to cause your fat to burn off. So everything should be incorporated with a healthy lifestyle plan. And depending on your time in life, if you're in perimenopause or menopause, adding hormonal supplementation or replacement. And if you're younger, recognizing that when you are on certain contraceptives, it may impact your metabolic functioning as well. So let's get on with what kinds of supplements. Well, I broke it down into categories because we want to think about the mechanism. Like, why would a certain supplement be beneficial for weight control? So I'll go through my different categories that I created. I started where functional medicine always begins. And what is that? It is the gut. We always start with the gut. So looking at the gut, what do we want to think about? We want to think about prebiotics, okay? So prebiotics are really important. Think of it as fiber in some kind of a supplement. So what does fiber do? Fiber helps to nourish and develop an appropriate gut microbiome. So the microbiome is incredibly important to every aspect of health, including weight. And when you have an unhealthy or dysbiotic gut microbiome, you're going to have dysfunction of your liver. You're going to develop impaired gut barrier or leaky gut, creating inflammation that can create total systemic, total body inflammation. And underlying inflammation is the development of insulin resistance. And when you have high levels of insulin, you're always in a state of creating and storing fat. You cannot easily, if at all, lose body fat when you have high levels of insulin. So we have to nourish and develop a healthy gut microbiome. To that end, we have some supplements that can augment your dietary fiber called prebiotics. And we're going to talk about probiotics. They're the microbes. But prebiotics are the nourishment, the food for those microbes. So what's my favorite as a supplement? Arabinogalactin. So arabinogalactin is found in a multitude of foods. And that's why you should eat across the rainbow of vegetables. And don't forget root vegetables, all kinds of vegetables. So in those magical vegetables are fibers, including arabinogalactin. And there's quite a bit of published data showing that this can help nourish and improve a gut microbiome, which can help to improve weight loss. Another easy supplement is buying over-the-counter psyllium seed and psyllium seed husk. And you can buy this as it's like a food, but I consider it like a supplement because it's not used as part of your meal. It's used as a supplement. This is a wonderful kind of a soluble fiber that will improve gut function, improve your ability to have proper evacuations. In other words, have proper bowel function and bowel movements, which is really important for maintaining optimal weight. So we definitely want to think about incorporating organic psyllium seed and psyllium seed husk into the diet as a supplement. Now, along with that, we can use potato starch. Now, isn't that amazing that you can actually use a starch as a supplement because this is a resistant starch. It is totally for feeding the gut microbiome. It will not turn into sugar. So that's another interesting sort of a supplement that you can use to help you with gut health as a way to increase weight loss. And appetite. I just want to tell you that when you incorporate the fibers that are in these supplements I'm telling you about, they'll give you a feeling of fullness, which will reduce your appetite. So that's so important. And what else? Fiber increases your own natural production of GLP-1. Yes, you're supposed to make it naturally. And this is one of the ways that we can promote natural production. And what's another supplement? Well, another one, you have to be careful. Some people get some gut symptoms, like bloating and gas, but it's inulin. So inulin is used as a food, we'll say additive, but I'm talking about using it as a food supplement, okay? So inulin, which is, as well, comes from food, is another very interesting soluble fiber that can help with gut microbiome improvement. Now let's get into probiotics. So probiotics are the microbes. Now, there's so many out there, and there are many, many good companies. But for general gut health and to improve your gut microbiome, look for one that has a minimum of 5 billion, and you want to have a blend of lactobacilli and bifidobacterium. Now, it's really hard to go through all the different brands, and I would like you to mix them up. No one really knows how to select a small number of microbes to give to try to improve gut health. So the best way is to go with variety. So whatever brand or type that you buy, mix it up. Like at least every couple of months or more frequently, change exactly what you're buying. Get a different number, a different manufacturer. So mix it up. And of course, I'm not talking about food because I want you to eat fermented foods as well. And what about other things that can improve gut health? Because it really is important if you're going to lose weight to have a healthy gut. So this is interesting. There's a short-chain fatty acid that has published data called butyrate. Butyrate is produced by fermentation of fibers by your gut microbes. Of course, it has to be the right gut microbes. And they make this product that's called a short-chain fatty acid that acts as food for the lining cells of the gut. It also can go to the brain and make you feel happier and calmer. It binds to the vagus nerve as a vagus nerve stimulator to improve what we call rest and digest. Everything is better, you're calmer. And it's been shown to actually improve weight control. So think about that one. And then everything that improves gut health. And what about digestion? It's so critical. If you're going to run the machinery of your cells, like the mitochondria, which we're going to talk about in a minute, those are the organelles in cells that create energy. They burn fat, they burn sugar, and you need to have optimal functioning of your mitochondria. Well, it turns out that you need to have certain ingredients in your diet, and they have to not only be in your diet, they have to be digested, they have to be absorbed. Absorbed is essential. What does it matter what you put in your mouth if it doesn't get into your regular part of your body? So digestive enzymes, especially as you age, our digestive system changes. And often, especially with proteins, it's really hard to digest, but other things too. That's why some people, they have trouble eating certain types of foods because they don't have enough digestive enzymes. So these are simple to buy over the counter, and they come either from plant-based or from animal-based digestive enzymes. You can experiment, try a couple of different types and see how your digestive system responds. Another really important supplement to help with gut health is L-glutamine. L-glutamine is an amino acid that the gut lining cells love. So it's food for your gut lining cells. So we start with, for weight control, everything to support the gut. So always start with the gut. And what next? Well, I mentioned that leaky gut leads to systemic inflammation. Inflammation leads to insulin resistance. And insulin, which is a vital hormone for survival, but it promotes the storage and production of fat. So we don't want to have unrealistically unhealthy levels of insulin. And that's triggered by too high of glucose. So we want to do things that will control our glucose, maintain proper insulin regulation, insulin resistance. We want to have insulin sensitivity, and we want to lower inflammation. So for inflammation, my favorite herb is curcumin, and you want to get an absorbable type. Now, I didn't mention turmeric. So turmeric, which you can have as a spice, but also as a supplement, is great for gut health. So I'm glad I thought of it now. Definitely include turmeric, but absorbable curcumin gets into the body itself to help reduce total body inflammation. Another really interesting herb that is not thought about enough is boswellia. Boswellia is also known as Indian frankincense. I think of it as a general anti-inflammatory. So boswellia I would recommend taking with meals, and it's great if you have headaches, if you have general aches and pains, but also to just lower inflammation. Another type of supplement are specialized pro-resolving mediators. These are derived from omega-3, which I also want you to include. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory in its own right, but also is the precursor for SPM, specialized pro-resolving mediators, which convert from a pro to an anti-inflammatory state in the body, helps to have resolution of inflammation. Inflammation is essential for life-saving situations, like if you're being attacked by a wild animal, you're in a traumatic accident, or if you're being invaded by pathogens like bacteria and virus. But what you don't want to have is just a steady state of inflammation for no reason. That will lead to weight gain. So we want to lower that inflammation. And what about omega-6? I mentioned omega-3. Well, omega-6 is always maligned, like it's pro-inflammatory. No, it is not. From omega-6s come both pro and anti-inflammatory products. And some of the anti-inflammatory products are known as the cannabinoids, the endocannabinoids. Well, the endocannabinoids, like endo from within, that's what you make from omega-6. But most people consume more than enough omega-6. So I'm not recommending that you take an omega-6 supplement unless you have, like, say, PMS. And then, like oil of evening primrose, which is from an omega-6 derivative, is actually anti-inflammatory and beneficial, but not for general use. But CBD, which does not have THC. So we're not talking about marijuana. We're not talking about cannabis that has THC. We're talking about the other part of the plant that is CBD and its cohorts, its friends. So we'll say CBD and friends. They can be very anti-inflammatory. Now, I don't want you to go over the top, but say you have sort of an ongoing kind of a chronic pain or something like that, then I do recommend that you use, not necessarily every day, all the time, but that you incorporate some CBD as an anti-inflammatory. And another one of my favorites is quercetin. Quercetin is found in things like apples and onions and garlic, and it helps stabilize mast cells, the first responders of the immune system, to help reduce inflammation. Now, I had mentioned that inflammation underlies a lot of the escalation of insulin resistance. So what can you do about that? Well, there's a mineral called magnesium, which is involved in over 700 reactions in the body. Magnesium can be beneficial for weight loss. It reduces stress, it helps with sleep, which is so critical for weight loss, is that you get adequate sleep, but it also is involved in helping with glucose sensitivity. So you have reduction of insulin resistance, and you have more insulin sensitivity, and you deal with your glucose so you don't have higher levels circulating, which then would trigger higher levels of insulin production from your pancreas. Another mineral is chromium. So chromium can be incorporated in a number of supplements and can help with lowering glucose levels, because when you lower glucose, you will lower insulin, you will lower inflammation, and you will have much better outcomes with weight, okay? And how about the famous berberine? You've all been hearing about berberine as a possible replacement for GLP-1 agonists. Well, berberine can help lower and regulate glucose as well. But guess what? It probably works primarily, not exclusively, but probably primarily by altering the gut microbiome in a beneficial way. So always include berberine, but not forever, okay? I say like use it for 3 months and then take a break and then maybe go back to using it, because we don't really have long-term data. We don't have long-term data on really a lot of supplements. So in fact, we don't have tons of research. We have science and we have some research because nobody wants to pay to produce those studies. But everything I'm telling you has scientific data, and many have actual published studies to go with it. What's another fun type? I think it's fun because I happen to love the flavor of cinnamon. So of course cinnamon is a food, but you can also take cinnamon as a capsule, and it actually acts as an insulin sensitizer. So cinnamon is another really interesting supplement that you can take to help lower your blood sugar. Now, what's another thing? Well, I mentioned stress and sleep. So if you're highly stressed, you're going to activate the sympathetic part of your autonomic nervous system. Sympathetic, S as in stress. And part of the stress response is adrenergic, adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland under a stressed situation, which if it's chronic stress, and this is going to be a chronic situation, is producing higher amounts of cortisol. Now, cortisol is essential for life. It's actually the only hormone that if you don't have any, you'll die in 24 hours. So it's essential to life to have cortisol. But too much of a good thing is not good, and it will trigger weight gain through a number of different mechanisms. So when you have high cortisol, you will alter your gut microbiome, and you're going to get leaky gut, and you're going to get chronic inflammation, which underlies insulin resistance and weight gain, okay? And you're not going to have proper sleep. You're not going to have proper melatonin production during the night. And melatonin helps with glucose regulation, as well as doing many other things like helping you to get quality sleep. So you don't want to have high levels of cortisol. What else can cortisol do? It can increase your appetite, make it dysregulated, and alter your circadian rhythm, so you end up getting the night munchies. And that is not a good thing, because you're definitely more insulin resistant at night. So eating late at night will definitely trigger more weight gain. So stress reduction is critical, and also having adequate sleep. So what are some of my favorite supplements for that? Ashwagandha, which is another Ayurvedic or Indian herb that brings you to that calm state. So if you're too wired, like I can't sleep, I'm so wired, it calms you down. If you're just blah, 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 I don't want to move, like I'm so down, it helps bring you up. It brings you to that sort of sweet spot. What if you're just really anxious, and you eat because of anxiety? It's like stress eating. A lot of people do that, and you can't fall asleep because your mind is just racing. Well, I love Bacopa, another Ayurvedic herb, which not only makes you feel smarter, or actually be smarter, it also is calming. It will lower anxiety. So ashwagandha and Bacopa, and there are so many others like lemon balm, Chinese skullcap, then there's passion flower, valerian. So these are all really wonderful. And don't forget teas. I don't usually talk about teas enough, but you can have things that are calmative, like kava tea, which I think tastes delicious. Holy basil, also known as tulsi tea, and many other calming blends of teas. So often when people are hungry, or they think they're hungry, what they really are is stressed. And if they sit down and hydrate, which is often another issue, they're not hydrated enough, then what happens is they feel calmer, their appetite goes away. So you sit down with a big mug of like tulsi tea or chamomile, which I didn't mention, which can also be used as a supplement, chamomile, or you have my favorite, kava kava tea. And you know what? You just sip it, you make it really hot, and you sip it, and after a while, you're not so hungry anymore. And what about green tea? Green tea has data to show that it will help you lose weight. Now, I'm not a big fan of high-dose green tea supplements because a little bit for a short period of time, but not chronic use. I like chronic drinking of green tea. But if you don't like green tea, which a lot of people don't, they think it tastes like dirt, substitute oolong, which is Chinese tea, which is different in its flavor, but very comparable in its benefits. And many people who don't like the flavor of green tea actually love oolong. But the reason I don't push green tea supplements is that green tea, although it's very uncommon, there have been some reports of liver compromise, like it can damage the liver. So I don't want anyone to have liver damage. So don't use too much green tea as a supplement. That never happens when you drink green tea as a tea. Okay, now what about hormones? Well, most hormones are by prescription, but interestingly, there are some hormones that you can buy in the US over the counter. One of them is an adrenal androgen called DHEA. DHEA, like I said, is an adrenal androgen. It's anabolic. It causes building of tissues like muscle and bone. And there's published studies in women showing that when you give DHEA and do nothing else, you lose visceral fat, belly fat, and inches around your waist just from taking DHEA. Now, I recommend starting low, like only 5 milligrams a day, and I would never, ever go above 50. And usually I top out at 25 because it's an androgen, so male type hormone. So some women will get like some facial hair or they'll get some acne. So I'd rather go slowly and build up and see how people feel and see what the reaction is. But that's published data. And what about the other hormone that you can buy over the counter? Melatonin. So sleep is essential for weight loss. Not having adequate sleep will cause weight gain. So we don't want that. So I don't like massive doses of melatonin, except in, we'll say, special cases. So start low with just like a 0.5 milligram, and you can take it even a couple of hours before bedtime. You can go up to 1 milligram. Now, for jet lag, I say 6 to even 9 milligrams at bedtime, but only for 3 days, okay, at each end of the trip. So when you get there and when you get back home. So yes, there can be special circumstances where you'll use high-ish doses of melatonin consistently, especially in some elderly people. But as a general rule, we want to encourage sleep. We want to allow your own body to have its natural surge of melatonin around 2 a.m. when you have this big surge of melatonin naturally. And so we want to encourage falling asleep and then letting your body do its natural, ideal thing. So there are other supplements out there, many of which have been debunked. In other words, they actually are not very useful. So think of the mechanism. Is this supporting my gut function? Is this anti-inflammatory? Is this going to help with my insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation? Will this promote calmness, reduce stress? Will it help promote sleep? Will it help regulate my appetite? These are the kinds of supplements that I promote for weight loss. There's no magic pill out there that magically makes fat melt off your body. We only could wish. So when you incorporate these types of supplements and you rotate things around and you incorporate all the lifestyle tricks, I call them tricks, like exercise and sleep, stress reduction, like meditation, and of course eating a wonderful, diverse, plant-focused diet, everybody can lose weight. And then we're going to talk more in the future about fasting, okay? I'm like very expert on fasting. I was involved with the very early stages of the introduction of Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet, onto the market. So I go way back with fasting, and we'll talk about that as another trick. We'll say our special tools for helping to promote weight loss. But I hope these supplements can be incorporated into your life to help you to optimize weight loss and not losing precious muscle, because that's essential for a healthy quality life. Thanks.